So, hi everyone, and welcome to a first recorded debate with Citizen Cosmos, because it's supposed to be live and we're gonna pretend it's live, and there's a lot of people in the audience, and yay, they're all shouting and screaming. It's amazing. Guys, whoever is listening to this recording, I'm Citizen Cosmos, Serge. I don't know if you've seen previous episodes we did. We did one on Atom 2.0, we did one on liquid staking, and recently we did one on Cosm Wasm. So today we're going to do one on stablecoins. I have 5 people with me here today. Maybe there's going to be one more person. One of them is already, thankfully, a surprise. It's Chad from Thorchain. Thank you for being here. I've seen more people going, more and more. I've seen Carter twice. I've seen Carter twice. I thought it was just the face. He was like, fuck, why am I here? You know, but it wasn't. It was like the old Carter being stuck. Yusuf with IST, Dove with Kujira, Condex and Siddharth. Guys, I'm going to now shut up and let you introduce yourself one by one. I'm going to start with Carter because there's 2 of him. So Carter, if you could give a brief introduction and what stablecoin you're going to represent today.
So my name is Carter Wetzel. I'm the lead researcher for Shade Protocol, and the stablecoin I'm going to be representing today is Silk. It's a privacy-preserving stablecoin pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities, and it is over-collateralized using the traditional MakerDAO model with a slight shift in how liquidations are equitably handled in the stability pool.
Dove, thank you. Dove.
Thank you very much. I'm Dove. I'm representing Kujira and the USK stablecoin, also over-collateralized with a basket of crypto assets. And I guess much like Carter, with a kind of a big view on how we handle liquidations, having had experience in that in the Terra days and now on our own chain. So it's good to be here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Chad? Hi, long time no see.
I'm trying to unmute myself. So my name is Chad. I'm from the Thorchain project. We have an algo stable design that we've been floating the community for quite so many months. The code is actually live. It actually works in the code right now. Other than it's the feature itself is feature flagged off. So the algo stable doesn't actually exist yet, but the code is ready to be. Well, it needs to be tested before we actually do that, but it theoretically could be turned on tomorrow.
Nice. Thanks. Yusuf?
Yeah. Hey, guys. This is Yusuf. So I'm representing the IBC stablecoin built by Interprotocol on the Agoic blockchain. I'm a member of the economic committee, so IST is a fully collateralized and soon to be over-collateralized stablecoin. That's pretty much it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Siddharth?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Siddharth. I'm part of the Comdex team. I'm representing CMST or Composite, which is an over-collateralized stablecoin on the Comdex chain, currently backed by a series of Cosmos assets like Atom, Osmo, and also other stablecoins.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the intros. And straight away, I'm going to say there was supposed to be one more rep here, Yelena, with USDC. I don't want to say for her who she would be representing, but at least she was going to talk about USDC and talk about, what USDC is. Unfortunately, she cannot make it. She couldn't make it. Unfortunately, she's also not live. But hopefully this will be on today to answer all of the speakers straight away, because we kind of jumped in it, and all of the listeners as well probably wondering how long this debate is going to go on for. So until somebody dies, or until we decide what stablecoin is the best, or until Doc 1 joins this debate, this is going to go on for. Now, jokes aside, guys, because there is 5 of us, 6 of us really with me, I'm going to ask a question. I will pick on you if nobody answers. So, let's do it a bit like this. Let's have a little bit of fun. And my first question is going to be very silly in probably the eyes of many listeners to that, but I'm going to ask it, and anyone is welcome to answer. What is the stablecoin, and why do we need a stablecoin?
I can go.
Yay!
So I would say, a stablecoin, it's a cryptocurrency that serves as a unit of account, is pegged to stable reserve asset like the dollar, for example, it can be seen as a medium of exchange for everyday transaction. At least that's the hope, because we're not able right now to use it in the real world. It's kind of within crypto. It's also, I think, a way to store value, although I'm not so sure about that. I would say store value in the short term, because in the long term, right, you have inflation, so that's not perfect to store value, but at least in the short term, yes. And I'll also add that it's a medium of exchange, definitely. And it can act as a bridge between crypto and everyday fiat currency. So by providing a protection against volatility, it has the potential to serve everyday needs, basically.
Yeah. I mean,
Any more takes?
Yeah, I think that's great. Obviously, most of it, I mean, of course, it's also very capital efficient, I think, right? I'm sure we can all agree, because if you compare it to something like a lending market, which is obviously key as well, but it's pretty cool because you obviously don't need a lender. The protocol becomes the lender. So it's actually a very capital efficient way. Depending on how your stablecoin is designed, of course, if it's somewhat collateralized, then it's a very capital efficient way to actually get more use out of your assets, again, depending on how your stablecoin is designed. So that's pretty cool, not having to rely on a lender. So that's kind of like, it's kind of the reason why we initially went for a stablecoin route before we went for some kind of money market. So yeah, I think that capital efficiency is really key. And then, of course, just in simple terms, right? Like people want to be trading against an asset that they're very, very familiar with price-wise. Experienced traders will really understand how to kind of hedge themselves against a volatile asset like any other, even Bitcoin, for example. So yeah, I think the fact that it gives you that side of a pair that you really, truly, deeply understand. Obviously, a lot less risk if you're trading against two non-stable assets. Yeah, it becomes tricky. So I think yeah, that's my 2 cents on top of why they're important. Yeah.
Can I jump in and be a little bit of devil's advocate, because I want it to be a debate. So I'm making notes as you guys speak, and my question was, what is a stablecoin and why do we need it? And so far, you guys said unit of account, medium of exchange, short-term store of value, serve daily needs, capital efficient hedge, but that could be applied to any money. So I'm going to be devil's advocate here. Why do we need stablecoins then?
I mean,
Well, it's about changing your risk profile, right? So it's about whenever you're investing in any kind of market, whether it be crypto or something else, you have high volatile or high risk assets, and you have low risk assets. And so oftentimes stables can be used as a way to de-risk yourself from the markets. If you think the market's going to go down, we're going to go more bearish, something like this, pulling out, selling your Bitcoin into a stable coin, and then buying back into the bottom. So it's a useful tool to just be able to freely change your risk profile to the markets.
Sedath and Carter, you have been quiet. Is there no stable coins? I know you guys have stable coins. Come on.
I don't think we need stable coins. I think we need decentralized. No. I don't think we need stable coins. I think we need decentralized stable coins.
Okay.
I think the whole beauty of the decentralized stable coin is it's open source money, it's censorship resistance, it represents global participation. And so I think that differentiation is very important, because a regular stable coin with no decentralization isn't that much different than a regular real world dollar. It's just in a different form, and it has interoperability with different products and services. And because there's such a deep demand for liquidity, there is demand for non-decentralized stable coins. But what many of us are here for is the promise and the attributes of decentralized stable coins, and that is the key differentiation.
Could I ask a question, guys, then? It seems that so far, and please, by all means, I'm telling you, I'm going to be devil's advocate for the whole of this conversation. So feel free to shoot at me anything you want. This is like, my job is to get into your heads. It seems to me that, when Carter started saying decentralized stablecoins, everybody was like, yeah. And it seems that so far, the closest we kind of got to decentralized stablecoins, the closest, and wait till the second part before you attack me, is algorithmic stablecoins. But also algorithmic stablecoins have been the most dangerous and the most disappointing and the most fucked up thing. I'm sorry to say it, hey, but it seems that unless it's algorithmic, it has some centralization parts to it. So what do we do here? What am I getting wrong? Help me out.
I mean,
So
Sid, I don't want to, just before, I mean, I think it might be the same with you guys, Sid. And, all designs are cool, and obviously there's experimentation. But we chose to not go the route of backing it with any centralized assets. Well, to be fair, you could argue now we have PaxG, which tracks gold. But I mean, in terms of USK, we've opted not to actually back it with anything other than that. But if you look at these, we're talking basically about tokenization of whatever, like some kind of commodity or whatever you want to do. So I think that if you consider, like, we quite like the gold idea, for example, because it hardly ever does anything. So it's pretty, in that regard, it's pretty stable. So it's quite a good asset to use as collateral. But yes, I mean, Sid, I'll let you carry on, but I think it's an ever-changing field, and I'd like to think we're all moving towards that point. But at some point, you've just got to go with what you're given. And what people don't really realize is that many people might not realize is that you can wind down collateral assets, right? You can keep raising the interest rate slowly until it doesn't make sense for you to pay back your position. So I don't think there's anything wrong with some kind of experimentation initially, even if that, I mean, as I say, even if that means for some in the panel, using USDC or whatever the case may be, that's all good. But it's probably important to note that it's like an ever moving beast, and you are able to kind of unwind collateral types as you grow and as you get further down the line. And that's something that I've had to learn too. So anyway, Sid, yeah.
No, I think very good point, Dov. And I was kind of thinking along the same lines where in terms of decentralization itself, when you look at, let's say, an Atom CDP stablecoin, USK is one, IST will soon be one, CMST currently is. So in that regard, of course, the approach or the goal is to be decentralized in the sense that you're backed by a basket of decentralized currencies in an over-collateralized manner. Of course, what we did with StableMint and I know IST has the parity stability module as well. That essentially is kind of meant to be a tool that serves to achieve short-term arbitrage when there is kind of deviation in the prices of the stablecoin. So if at any point your IST or your CMST trades at, let's say, 1.05 or 95 cents, you want to be able to quickly close that with an arbitrage, which is what that entire module is meant to serve. But in terms of kind of the core approach of how it was meant to be and how it's built, the approach has always been to make it decentralized in that regard. So which is why when it comes to the way one is able to mint CMST today, of course you can use USDC, you can use DAI, whatever. But at the same time, we have the capability to allow users to over collateralize with Atom, over collateralize with Osmo. I think at the time of this recording, the proposal to enable ST Atom is just passed on our chain as well. So soon users will be able to use liquid stake derivatives of Atom, which will kind of make it more efficient for them to have a yield bearing asset in the form of staked Atom serve as a collateral to create liquidity against it. So in that regard, I'd say the approach is still towards decentralization. The centralized counterpart just serves as a tool to close that small arbitrage window that gets opened up whenever there is deviation in the price of the stable asset.
It seems to me as though still, like, the whole, I mean, I know I might be annoying you already by this point with the same kind of dig into the same hole, but it seems to me that, like the whole words themselves, stable coins and decentralization, and I'm all for the centralized stablecoins. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I'm actually against stablecoins personally. I don't think we need stablecoins. This is my personal opinion, and you can shoot me all you want. But I think the whole the sentence "decentralized stablecoins" by itself is paradoxical, because if you want stability, you need somebody to make sure that if the peg is broke, you need to bring it back to the peg, or either you can do it algorithmically. But so far, and I actually want to ask Chad maybe next, or whoever else wants to jump in. I mean, how do we I mean, algorithmic stablecoins have been shit. I'm sorry. So far, not even shit. They've been worse than shit. They've been like I mean, and this is no, it's true, bro. Like, but it's so far. This is.
But this is early days, right? Like you need to look at the arc of time. Like Terra, like because I guess you're referring mostly to Terra, was an experiment from what? Like it's 2 years, 3 years old. Like we need to give it some time, right? Like things take time to build. Like great things take time to build, and like we like the first stablecoin was designed what, like in 2016? Like it was Tether. Like it's a 6 years industry, right? The first decentralized stablecoin was DAI. It's very recent, so we just need to give it time. And I'm not completely pessimistic on algorithmic stablecoins. Like they might work at some point. It's just that it didn't work so far because the design was probably not the best. But like that doesn't mean that we should stop experimenting, right? Including with algorithmic stablecoins.
So there have been 4 or 5 different algo stablecoins in the last few years. Obviously, they've all collapsed, but they've all collapsed for different reasons, right? Like Iron, its stablecoin collapsed because the founders started dumping the volatile asset in the market, and their oracle, the price oracle, to tell them what the price was delayed, a couple minutes, what the hell it was. And so the pricing was coming down faster than the oracle can push information. So it failed because it was arbitrage bots weren't able to arbitrage anymore because the oracle was slow, right? So the whole thing more or less collapsed. Terra was different. Terra had its primary market was designed not to work throughout the day. They had a limit on how much the primary market would actually function on a per day basis. And then they used the LFG after the fact for the rest of the day, right? To use this kind of its big, metaphorical muscles to push, to control the secondary markets like Curve and these other places, right? Which obviously become highly problematic, right? So, like we have to say that when we talk about algo stablecoins, they're not all the same, and they all exist, and they all have different structures, different designs, implementations, and they all failed for different reasons. And when they fail, it's a good thing. It informs me and informs the rest of the industry of what didn't work and why did it not work. So the next person to try an algo stable, which is Thorchain or something else, can look at all these things and say, here's where they all fail. Now, like Thorchain's algo stable design was made before Terra collapsed, months before Terra collapsed. And the design that we had come up with already fixed the reasons why Terra was going to collapse into the future. Like after watching Terra collapse, like there was no actual significant design changes made to Thorchain's algo stable design because we already realized how and where it would actually collapse. You know what I mean? Like how it actually would get to that place. And our design is different in a way to protect us from such a scenario. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But just because something has failed 5 times before doesn't mean the 6th time it's not going to fail. I mean, Edison tried to create the light bulb, took about 1,000 different metals to experiment with before he found a metal that actually would illuminate for more than 15 minutes, right? So we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and think and not think from a first principles perspective and just dismiss all algo stables just because Terra has some issues or other ones as well.
Absolutely, and I want to get into like a design question here to answer why am I playing the devil's advocate is because of all of the things you guys have mentioned, the risk in unit of account, capital efficiency. They don't have time to wait. Capital efficiency has to be if I want capital efficiency for my money, it cannot wait 5 more years because but again, I'm not going to go. This is not me arguing. This is me being devil's advocate. But let's go into design. And can you tell, again, I'm going to ask all of you now, though, guys, if it's okay with you. Maybe let's start with Chad since we're already talking. Could you tell me what is the design specifics of the stablecoin you guys are trying to design at Thorchain that will, in your opinion, right now, your personal opinion, make it different and make it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our particular design, obviously, we're on our own chain. So one of the biggest problems with stablecoins is actually not the primary market, it's the secondary market. What I mean by that is just because a coin is selling for, and we see this too in like other pegged assets. It doesn't have to be a stablecoin, it could be a pegged ETH or whatever. But if you're selling on Curve or Uniswap and the price is detaching from the primary market, that by itself is actually not an issue. Right? People freak out because they look on coinmarketcap.com and they see these things depegging, blah, blah, blah. The reality is it's just selling at a different price on the secondary market. And that's actually fine. Like if I buy an Apple computer and then I sell it on Facebook Marketplace for $400 less, Apple Computer has not depegged. It's just that you're selling an asset on a secondary market that is choosing to sell it for a different price than the primary market. Do you know what I mean by that? So that was part of the issue, is that we would launch these stable coins and then also launch them on secondary markets, and oftentimes the secondary market could push around the primary market. The tail was wagging the dog instead of the dog wagging the tail. If there's more liquidity on the secondary market than there's in the primary market, that becomes a problem, right? Because now the secondary market can push around primary market, which is supposed to maintain the actual peg itself, right? So the first thing that the Thorchain is doing is that there is no secondary markets. The only place you can buy and sell, the Tor asset, what we call Tor is the stablecoin, is on the Thorchain network itself, and it will always 100% guarantee that it is always doing a 1-to-1 ratio to the stablecoins that it actually has. So it actually has Tether, USDC, and DAI, and a bunch of other stablecoins from various blockchains across the ecosystem. And you can always redeem on a 1-to-1 from, minus slip fees, but your Tor asset to USDC, USDT, even $1 worth of Bitcoin. It's all the same, right? It always guarantees that. It's actually not mathematically practical to depeg in that sense. As long as the layer 1 pools are correct, if they're arbitraged, that's people arbitrage in the Bitcoin pool or people arbitrage in the USDC pool or whatever it might be, then it's always going to be correct, right? So that's the first thing, is make sure you have a primary market that actually functions and you don't allow a secondary market to push around the primary market.
I hate the unmute button. Sid, what about, again, your perspective, your design? Why, in your opinion, the design of the stablecoin you're creating, again, your personal opinion, why will it be better? Why will it work? Why will the market work with it? Why will the peg work? Why will it be stable?
Well, the peg it works. So in Thorchain's case, its price oracle is its own AMMs, its own pools, right? So it's in Terra's case, all the validators would go to a various centralized exchanges. So it was dependent upon centralized exchanges to get its pricing information of what the dollar value of Luna is, right? And so they were relying on centralized exchanges to give them that. In our case, we don't have no dependencies on anything external, right? Nothing about Thorchain has any dependencies on anything, right? So we have USDC, we have USDT, we have DAI, we have maybe Frax. We'll add other, maybe some Cosmos chains, like one of these stable coins these other guys are talking about. And then the network picks an aggregate of those, right? Picks the median, not the average, but the median of those things to understand what the price of Rune is in dollars, right? So in order to depeg, you'd have to manipulate the pricing of the 51% of the pools in Thorchain's AMM. And if you were to try to do so, the trading volume, the fees go up really high, right? So if you want to try to push the price of USDC and USDT and like dump a whole bunch of money and spend a whole bunch of money trying to manipulate pricing, that inherently creates the minting and burning of Tor to become very expensive. The fees go up like crazy. So it makes it not practical to actually manipulate those pools and then actually, cash in on some Tor or whatever. You'd lose more money in this situation than you would gain it. So because it has no mechanism to rely on externally and it has ways of protecting itself internally, there's no practical way for it to actually depeg.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Sid, what about you guys? Can you do the whole same thing now with Comdex?
For sure. So, for us, the approach towards why we needed a stablecoin in the first place has a lot to do with how we ended up choosing the model. So the history of Comdex, we come from kind of, institutional background. We started building products in the commodities institution space, recognize that one of the biggest spaces that needs disruption is the payments itself, especially when it comes to large cross-border trade volumes, which often, go into several business days because of various documentation requirements and whatnot. And we recognized that that was one space we really wanted to disrupt, and it would be more futuristic to rely on something like stablecoin-based settlements rather than traditional fiat rails for payments. And that's what drove us towards, looking into stablecoins in the first place. And it was, I think, several months before, I think June of 2020 is when we first announced that, we're going to start building our stablecoin. We have a model in mind. We locked it in. And at that time itself, it was very clear to us that if we had to create a decentralized stablecoin, the most kind of robust model that existed at the time, which had proven its test of time against volatility, was the over-collateralized model that MakerDAO had made for DAI. So it seemed prudent to us to not try to venture too far away from what's been proven to work and will be something that will ultimately be used in an institutional environment. So again, to kind of answer your question, our approach is very similar to what MakerDAO has done with the DAI stablecoin. It's over-collateralized, backed by assets like Atom, Osmo, and other highly liquid assets in the Cosmos ecosystem. Of course, liquidity of assets becomes kind of the key parameter or the key metric we look at when it comes to assessing how a collateral asset is to be used in the protocol. But in terms of how we kind of differentiate our approach, especially for us in the Cosmos ecosystem, being all POS chains, a lot of times when you think about DeFi, you kind of have to think about staking returns versus DeFi returns, because that's what the user is ultimately thinking about when they choose to deploy the liquidity. So our approach is to start, taking steps towards integrating yield-bearing assets as collateral in our protocol. So currently, we already have, ST Atom that we enable that we have allowed users to use to create stablecoin through over-collateralized CDBs. So your ST Atom is still earning its staking yield of whatever 19% or something like that on Stride, and it's essentially a self-paying loan, because your interest that the staking rewards that you earn on that Atom is higher than the interest that you would have to pay to the protocol for minting the CMST against it. Another approach that we're doing is we have a DEX on our chain, which is the CSwap DEX. We're enabling, or we will be enabling, users to use LP tokens of the liquidity they provide in the DEX to be used as collateral as well to mint the stablecoin. So again, your LP token from the liquidity you provide in the DEX is a yield-bearing asset that you possess. Allowing you to use that as a collateral to mint the stablecoin is now again, allowing you to earn yield while simultaneously using your stablecoin and other DeFi applications. So broadly, because we have a fully functioning DEX, we have a fully functioning money market on our chain as well. We want to unlock for users different types of leverage strategies that they could create themselves. So one example is you start with ST Atom, you collateralize, you mint the stablecoin. With the stablecoin, you buy more Atom, which you turn into ST Atom and kind of create a leverage loop of exposure on ST Atom. Similarly, you could do that with, let's say, providing liquidity to an ST Atom pool on the DEX, where you have the LP token from that, you use that to mint the stablecoin. With the stablecoin, you buy more ST Atom and provide more liquidity, and then you have a leveraged LP exposure on that position. So broadly, in terms of the mechanism itself, the approach is very similar to what we've done with DAI. How we differentiate ourselves is in unlocking different strategies that users can build themselves and kind of utilize the stablecoin themselves. Basically focusing on different places that the stablecoin finds utility to kind of drive more liquidity into the protocol.
So let me ask you a question, just to keep the conversation lively here. So I'm assuming, is there like a buyer of last resort within your implementation?
You mean in terms of what happens in liquidations, or?
Yeah. Somebody has in the type. So you have a liquidation scenario, right? Once people have to liquidate, so they either over collateralize, right?
Yep.
To me, that insinuates capital inefficiency, because you could spend $100 to get $50 of actual usable capital, and then you have to be worried about being liquidated, which is obviously something to be concerned about. But then when you want to get actually liquidated, when it actually comes, say you're at 110% collateralization at this point or something like this, you hit some threshold and you get liquidated by somebody else. You have to wait for somebody to be the buyer of last resort. Somebody has to come in and swoop in and basically auction off this last component of the collateral. Correct. So do you consider that to be a risk to that particular approach of relying on the buyer of last resort to keep things solvent?
So in terms of the way we handle liquidations on the protocol is we have a reverse Dutch auction that happens as soon as a vault gets liquidated. So basically what that means is, as soon as you hit that threshold, just as you described, let's say it's 110%, the protocol liquidates the collateral in order to ensure that whatever debt has been taken against that collateral remains solvent. That liquidated collateral undergoes a reverse auction. So the price is declining every kind of subsequent block. And what that enables is for anyone to participate in that auction, obtain that collateral, and then probably arbitrage it by selling it at market price in the external market. So a simple example, if you have Atom, which is being liquidated for a particular vault, if you wait long enough and there's still some Atom left to be liquidated, you could potentially buy that. Let's say if the trading price of the atom in the market is $15, you could have it potentially purchased on the protocol at 14, and then you can immediately sell it on the markets for 15, which is creating that arbitrage position for you. So that arbitrage itself kind of acts like an incentive mechanism for users to just participate in the liquidations. Of course,
Right.
we also have a recapitalization mechanism that's built in the protocol. So of course, when let's say post all of the liquidations happening, there's still a portion of the debt that remains under collateralized. Similar to how MKR recapitalizes the vaults on DAI, we have the Harbor token, which is going to recapitalize the vaults on the Harbor protocol for all the under collateralized CMST vaults.
Right, but if the price of the collateral, let's just call it Atom in this case, dives quick, then you won't, the buyer of last resort won't be available to liquidate. Is that fair to say?
That's where the recapitalization function comes in. So typically the auctions itself are also limited in duration. If at the end of the duration, the auction doesn't go through, it starts again at the new price of Atom, whichever price it is trading at in the market, just to ensure that it's always kind of within that auction period trading at whatever the nearest price in the market is at that point.
So if the Atom actually does go below the value of the stable, hypothetically, because the price has dropped 50% because something happened, I don't know, whatever. You are using your own token as a further backstop to that.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
The Harbor token recapitalizes the.
Is there a certain number of tokens that are allocated for this purpose, or does it print as many as needed to back the stable, or like how does that work?
No, it mints the token to back whatever is the delta at the time.
Okay, so then what you're describing to me, and correct me if I'm going wrong, is that you have a mixed kind of like collateralized, but also algo at the same time, kind of like Frax is kind of a mixed design. Obviously, not that Frax is very different from what you're describing, obviously, but you're doing like, well, we're over collateralized, but in the event that something goes haywire, that we then become an algo stable in the extreme scenario where Atom's token dives 80% or something like this.
Yeah, very much like how MKR.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Dev.
No, just because Sid, like what we saw, even with Luna, for example, and I suppose it doesn't really. I guess for the most part, it doesn't matter too much how you are performing those liquidations because you basically just need buyers. But one thing I will say that we saw, we were handling all the liquidations for Luna via Orca, right? And those literally only stopped working when the chain got pulled, when the chain was halted. So I know what you mean, Chad. You got to look out for these extreme scenarios, but you can also test for them, which has been pretty interesting. We've gone through this data and had a look. You'd be surprised. So like how it works with us is we have a queue-based approach, and then people can bid on those liquidations at their set values. But then if that capital falls below the threshold, then the regular liquidators come in. But what I will say is that we've seen it. So we've seen it in the most extreme scenario ever, and it's interesting because you still get people really wanting to buy that collateral. Obviously, Terra was a pretty extreme example. It's not that often that a project like that just unwinds to zero, basically. But it's interesting for sure. But I think you do get people. You get big heavy hitter liquidators. So depending on how your auction is designed, it's always good to kind of let have a backstop of some kind. And in this case, it's often just these like heavy hitter liquidators that come in. But yeah, I mean, I think, like Sid, the DAI model, I know it like pretty similar answer. It has been proven, and of course, you have to always be on your toes. But
isn't the DAI model like has shown that auctions don't always work? I mean, it typically works, commonly works, but we've seen it where like people have bought a bunch of ETH for like 12 cents, right, or something like this, where they're just under betting the thing, and the buyer of the last resort doesn't actually buy it at market value; it buys it at some incredibly large discount. We've seen it happen,
Yeah.
So I think what you're referring to is the Black Thursday kind of event that happened on MakerDAO, and that was a few years ago. I think the risk of something like that happening on a Cosmos chain is significantly lower than it was on Ethereum, because I think a large part of what caused that on DAI at the time was the Ethereum network was severely clogged with huge kind of transaction congestion, which kind of prevented liquidations from functioning the way they were supposed to. I'm really simplifying it down more than needs to, and which kind of led to there being no competition in the auction. So what that meant is you're the only person bidding for multiple $1 million worth of Ethereum, and you could bid at theoretically a cent and still win all that Ethereum in the auction because there's no one else to compete with you. So that was kind of part of what caused that. I think it's much less likely on a Cosmos chain because Cosmos chains have significantly higher capability to handle transaction volume. And just to go back to the previous point as well, I think one of the things that the beauty of the model that we've kind of built, I mean, just from learning from the ecosystem around as well, one of the key risk metrics we look at also is to put in debt ceilings for each collateral type to ensure that the maximum amount of debt or the maximum amount of stablecoin that one can issue against a particular collateral type is capped. So what that means is, let's say, in the scenario where there is a severe collapse in a particular collateral asset, the overall impact that collapse would have on the protocol is limited to how much debt ceiling is in place for that particular asset. And typically the debt ceiling is also designed in a way where if all of the Atom that currently sits on the protocol as collateral were to be liquidated, the liquidity of Atom markets should be able to handle that size of liquidation of Atom. So the debt ceiling is meant to kind of ramp itself up as the liquidity of the collateral asset keeps growing in the markets where it trades. But for the most part, the debt ceiling serves as its function of kind of limiting the impact of single asset collapse on the entire protocol.
Guys, let me quickly jump as well to Yusuf and to Carter to describe the advantages of the stablecoin. And just to make one single kind of sentence for all of you to hate me, it's ironic that you all bring in DAI as an example since we're talking about decentralized stablecoins. DAI is definitely not decentralized. So just saying that, Yusuf, could you please describe, considering it has the collateral it has, guys, I'm sorry, it's not decentralized. Yusuf, could you still please talk about your stablecoin IST in this case and why is it better and why is it not gonna depeg and sell it to us, sell us IST a little bit.
I'm not gonna say IST is better than Silk or CMST. I think they all have a different purpose. They all have a different design. So that needs to be, I think, respected. Before talking about the design, we should also talk about why IST is in this space. If we zoom out, I don't think that there's only DeFi. The market for stablecoins is huge. I like to say that stablecoins are the third $1 trillion opportunity in crypto. So the first one is BTC, the second one is ETH, and the third one clearly is our stablecoins, because it is simply the most important product market fit since the invention of Bitcoin. And the use cases are just mind-boggling in terms of diversity. So you have DeFi, but not only anything that requires anything that deals with payment usually is better suited with a stable currency. So if you push a bit further, you could also envision that all blockchain fees could be denominated in stablecoins. That there could be a case. It's not a strong opinion, but that we could have a case on that. You could also make a case for payment for NFT would make sense to have them denominated in stablecoins. The gaming industry also, blockchain-based gaming industry, could be denominated in stablecoins. So for all those reasons, we're in this space. But not only, there are other use cases that you can use, in the real world. If we talk about international remittance, right now, if you are in someone who's in Philippines or who's outside Philippines, I'm taking the example of Philippines because it's a well-known example. So if you're Filipino living in the US and you want to send money back to your country, if you go by Western Union or by MoneyGram, it's what 5-10% fee. It's like huge. It's almost like predatory fees. So that can definitely solve that, stablecoins. Cross-border payments, 100%, but also like for people like in countries where you have a lot of inflation, like Turkey, like Venezuela, like a lot of countries in South America, just being able like to use stablecoin to store your value, right? Like that's for me a game changer. So those are all the reasons why I am in the stablecoin space. So when it comes to IST, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and we're also inspired by the DAI stablecoin because like it simply works. Like UST came and it became the king in a matter of months, and although like almost made DAI like irrelevant at some point, but DAI is still here and UST is not. So I think this is like a very robust design, resilient design. And so when it comes to IST, like right now, what we have is, the PSM, where you can mint IST by depositing in other stablecoins. We're soon launching, like we hope it's going to be done in March, the vaults, where you basically that are over collateralized, with the liquidation mechanism that is in place, pretty much the same as the CMST with the Dutch auction. And so what I think, like we don't need to make it like super complicated. Like we have a design that works for now, right? Like the DAI model. And so as long as like you have proper risk management practices, you're like doing your expansion, like the expansion of the supply in a controlled, gradual, like responsible way, that you have also like good quality of collateral, that you're being very careful with what collateral you're allowing to mint that stablecoin, that you have also the right minting limits per collateral types based like on the risk profile of each assets, that your oracle mechanism is solid, that your liquidation mechanism is solid as well, and also that you have like a proper plan basically like to defend the peg in case like there is like a malicious attack, that you have in place like a reserve pool that is large enough and that acts as the last like backstop mechanism to defend the peg. So as long as you have all of that, I think like you have a good chance like to make it in this space. And for us with IST, we're also looking at having like use cases from the first day. So in our case, what we're doing is it's not live yet, but it's going to be very soon, where all the fees on the Agoric blockchain. So like we're going to have like multiple apps that are built on Agoric. They will use IST as for gas fees. So that's gives us like a use case from day one. Yeah, that's pretty much it for us.
But one thing I'd push back on you, because this is supposed to be a debate here, so trying to keep the conversation lively here, is that
I was gonna do it nastier, but hey, you go, Chad.
I'll help you out, brother. I'll help you out a little bit, brother.
Yay!
Is that you said that DAI works, and to me, it works in the sense that it has a soft peg to the dollar. That's obviously true, and it's been able to maintain that for the most part. It's a few dark days in its history, but for the most part, it's relatively stable, right? But the problem with DAI is that because it's backed by predominantly centralized assets, right? Like if you want to build a centralized version of anything, like a centralized exchange, for example, that's been done dozens of times, and it's relatively easy to do. To build a decentralized version of that, well, that's extremely much more difficult. That's why there's only one Thorchain in existence, and there's hundreds of centralized exchanges that exist that do what the Thorchain can do. So it's just like to say that the DAI system works, while it's totally fair because it's maintained that soft peg for a long period of time, it still does it being reliant on centralized entities. And even if you don't do that and you're using centralized assets like Ether, right? Like they don't use pure Ether for good reason, because the more volatile the collateral is, the more risk it takes to the protocol, You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if you're relying on some sort of oracle, the oracle becomes a centralized point that you have to worry about. Whether it be Chainlink, or I'm not sure what the oracles you guys are using in your particular cases, but like whatever the oracle is, that becomes a centralized point of risk. And Chainlink is probably the most decentralized oracle we have, and it's not fucking decentralized at all. Like not even a little bit. Right? So whenever you're using an oracle, whenever you're using centralized assets to back what you're trying to do, to me, that's not an example of success. Do you know what I mean?
It depends. Like it depends what you're trying to optimize for, right? Like what is the end goal of your stablecoin? So like if your end goal is just like pure decentralization and like that you're only optimizing for censorship resistance, then yes, I mean some of your points you're making like they make sense. But like I think like Zaki was saying, and I've seen an interesting podcast with I think with Carter and Zaki, right, with the Stablecoin Summit. Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for decentralization. I'm a decentralization maxi myself, etc. But like, we also need to like serve a plurality of use cases, right? And decentralization is a spectrum. Like that's very important to understand. That it's not all or nothing. It's not fully decentralized or zero decentralized. It's a spectrum. And we're also like in an experimentation phase. So when we say like, yes, we're like adapting the DAI model to IST, that doesn't mean that we're going to stick to this. Like this is an experimentation. This is like an experimentation space. Like on our team, like we have super strong like crypto economists. I'm not a crypto economist myself, but and myself, I'm super interested in experimenting, right? So like that doesn't mean that it's not the design that we have right now. It like is an entry point in the space, right? And then you can iterate from there. Like for example, like I'm very interested personally, like in the Frax model, and also like in the FPI model. That is you know like how you say preserving the purchasing power by indexing it to a basket of reward assets or consumer assets. So you know like the design can evolve, but you need to start somewhere. And also like what is very important, like it's also about the timing. Like what happened with UST, I think, was a real trauma for the industry. And so what you need to optimize for right now is to be able to preserve the peg like in a consistent way. As long as you can do that and you can regain the trust from the retail users, but also from institution, you've already like done massively. And then from there you can like iterate and do more experiments. So I don't see it like as a closed system where the design is done and you can't move further.
Right, but if you're designing your system, and using DAI as the example, where like half of DAI or more than half, whatever the number is now, is backed by USDC, you are compounding risk because you're taking on the risk of Circle and Coinbase managing that asset, and then you have protocol risk of there being smart contract related exploits, and then you have design model risk, like how are the ways this can fail, like the buyer last resort doesn't work, like I was mentioning earlier, for example. And so you're compounding risk with all these things. Like if you don't remove risk as you're innovating, then you're just creating additional risk. And the more likelihood that your project, whether it be a stablecoin or something else, has a higher likelihood of failing or collapsing.
So what is that risk? Like again, you're referring to the censorship risk, right? Or are you referring to
No,
that's what I'm saying. Like this
we started this conversation saying that decentralization, stablecoin is where it is. That's one thing Carter was saying. We all nodded our heads, yes. But then we keep on referring to stablecoins.
I've said.
Yeah, that's the only thing that Carter said thus far.
We will get to Carter. Wait.
I want to talk about algo stables.
Wait, Carter, you're next. I promise. I promise. Carter,
ready to
Carter, my man. It's because we're getting ready for you, Carter. Wait. You're next. I promise. You're next. I'm next. Before and I want to give Carter the word. Chat. Please finish your sentence, and then I want to move to Carter. I want to say something, and then move to Carter. Chat. Please finish.
Yeah, I'm always saying that if you want to innovate, great. Think of new designs and implementations. But if we're doing it in a way that we're just taking old concepts and old points of failure and then compounding that risk by adding more layers on top of it, we're probably not heading in the right direction as a community. We need to think about how do we get rid of the old risk and create a new risk. that is solely its own risk rather than 3 or 4 things compounding against each other.
And at this point, I know, Yusuf, you want to answer, I know, but I will give you a chance. Let's just get to Kara. All I want to say, by the way, guys, is there is a huge, massive, my favorite saying in Russian, nothing is more permanent than temporary. Kara, let me move to you. Let me move to you.
Because nothing is more permanent than a temporary solution is also my favorite quote. So we share a favorite
quote. You see, Carter, it was worth waiting all this time to get to you. Kara, sell us silk. Bang it on.
Oh, no, I'm not even necessarily that. I think the first thing to state is that like any sustainable project cannot break financial physics, right? Every single stablecoin represents a liability, which means there has to be a corresponding amount of assets to back that liability, right? That is the law of financial physics. If you're ever going to have a system where there's more liabilities than assets, then you incur the risk of bad debt and someone able to programmatically force the issue with the gap between assets and liabilities. That's fundamentally what happened with Terra. And so I think, Chad, what you're pointing out with the risks within the over-collateralized model, it's not that the financial mechanics aren't sound, it's that there's like individual component risks that make that up, right? Like conceptually at a high level, more assets than liabilities, wonderful. It buys time for liquidation, it buys times for ensuring the financial stability of these systems, but there's oracle risk and there's collateral risk. And I think you're just pointing out that over collateralized systems are not without their risks. It's not simple enough to just say, oh, over collateralized, therefore it's safe. It's like, no, there's many individual components here. And what long tail risks are you including in the design system by accepting it, right? Mm-hmm. That being said, I'm actually curious. I'm not even going to shill silk here. I'll just say the only difference is that it's private and it's pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. And if you want truly decentralized money, then your peg needs to be decentralized and it shouldn't be pegged to a centralized monetary system, okay? Everyone knows that was giving my talking points. But I think, Chad, I'd be curious to ask you a series of questions to understand some of the risks within the algorithmic model. So
sure.
My first question is, can liquidity providers on Thorchain leave at will? Are they locked up or are they able to enter and exit at will?
You mean people who provide liquidity into the pools?
Correct.
Yeah, they can leave whenever they want.
Okay, step 1, done. Is there any minting caps on the stablecoin?
Minting caps on the stablecoin? Like in terms of the total market supply that could exist, that you mean?
Correct. At any given moment, someone can, mint a lot. Is there caps on it?
There are not caps on it, but one of the decisions made was to not create a market for it or demand center for it. So in UST's case, there was a 20% fixed rate interest, which would cause people to mint forever. In this case, there is no source of revenue that you can make on purpose. There's no yield. There's no demand center. So the total supply would likely be quite small just because.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's an improvement. So healthier demand center, but still no caps on minting, and liquidity providers can enter and leave at will. And is it right now? It's seigniorage mechanism where you can burn governance token for dollar stablecoin. Is that the current model?
It would be the rune asset that you can burn the rune asset to mint the stable and vice versa. Yeah.
Okay. So the vector that I see that's very, very concerning. I know you guys have talked about like deterministic systems, right? And like within that hypothetical deterministic order making that you can ensure stability, but and anyone can mint, right? There's no limits on who can mint. Like if I have an address on Thorchain, I can mint. Okay, right.
Correct. So
permissionless minting, no cap. Okay. So you could have a scenario where Thor is sitting at $10, we'll say. Institution comes in, they buy up a crap ton of Thor. Everyone's happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Price sees a run up. They then mint. They burn all of their Thor at, let's say, $100. They convert it over to the dollar stable coin, right? And then let's assume that price doesn't necessarily stay at $100. Say it goes back to $10. You now minted out a bunch of liabilities when Thor was worth $100, and now it's worth $10. And the system you're using is a fee-based system to try to discourage that attacker from just dumping all at once. But there's two problems with that. One, there is secondary markets. There's secondary markets that people can spin up to have a perps market for shorting the governance token. So they can just slowly dump on the system, even if the fees are very high. And there's still going to be a drive down on the governance token, and their cost for attacking the system and the revenue they gain from the external market makes it profitable for them to attack it.
Yeah, the
And
secondary
that asset
market.
liability gap fundamentally exists, and your liquidity providers can leave. There's nothing locking the liquidity providers in. So all I'm saying is if you're going to put over collateralized models on trial, I'll also put algorithmic models on trial and say, fundamentally, if you have permissionless minting, you have no minting caps, and your market makers in the form of liquidity providers can leave. Even if you don't have a demand center, which is props to you, that's a much safer system. Even if you have a fee-based incentive system to try to stop them from dumping all at once, there are still massive attack vectors in that model, and I would be very, very concerned for Thorchain.
Okay, so when you say attack vectors, are you referring to somebody wanting to burn down the world and doesn't really care about a profit? Or are you saying people who want to profit from that scenario?
Absolutely profit from the scenario, and if your goal is to retain liquidity providers, they would be potentially running from the platform in the process. So that would be the two goals is to profit on a secondary market.
Liquidity providers would not necessarily leave the system, right? Liquidity providers don't have a reason to, right? Like, why would they exit? They're still making. If people are exiting and burning their Tor and they're exiting USDC, whatever, like liquidity providers are going to stick around.
Well, they're dumping the stablecoin on the Thorchain markets.
So what?
For all the other tokens.
Why does that matter?
There's a gap in liquidity there from when they minted
No,
out.
you're telling me that liquidity providers are going to leave, and I'm asking you why. They're making massive bank from the scenario.
Because they're essentially a run on the bank because of the gap.
Okay, but so liquidity providers on Thorchain, by the way, are not necessarily exposed to the Rune asset. We have an entire feature called Savers where you can provide Bitcoin and only take on Bitcoin exposure.
Yep.
Right. Those people have no reason to leave.
In that, but sure. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So liquidity providers don't have a reason to exit in this scenario. Right?
I think in the system with that much of a gap in the asset to liability matching, the person attacking the system.
You're talking about in a hypothetical scenario where the market cap of the stablecoin is far higher than the market cap of the Rune asset itself.
Doesn't necessarily have to be far higher. There just has to be a big enough gap between the two that a secondary perp market can attack it and have it be profitable. By dumping the stablecoin on every
so now you're talking about a secondary perp market, right?
Yes, no, that's a requirement.
Yeah, okay.
That's 100% a requirement.
So
you can't control perp markets from being spun up.
Yeah, so that's not a practical way of fighting of attacking Thorchain because it makes sure that Thorchain itself is the primary market of the Rune asset. There's not enough Rune on Binance's exchange that you can utilize for this purpose that you're talking about for shorting the Rune asset. If you could do that now, you could do it right now and make a lot of money for Thorchain, but you won't and you can't because it doesn't exist. The market's not there to support your ability to short the Rune asset. It doesn't exist. That's why
I get the claim. I get the claim.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just we could continue this discussion at length. I would just say the fact that there is only one asset backing the stablecoin, it's permissionless minting. There's no caps. You can't control that someone could spin up a secondary perp markets. You counter that claim in terms of talking about size and how you're still the primary source of information.
You couldn't just because all the primary market for Rune is on Thorchain's network.
Can you move Rune off of Thorchain? So like that centralized exchange?
There are centralized exchanges that sell Rune that you can buy and sell from, but the quantity on there is so far less than what it is on the network itself that the network becomes the dog wagging the tail in a sense rather than Binance wagging Thorchain. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah, no, I primary versus secondary. I get that. Yeah. I feel like we're repeating what you have added in is a fee system to try to make it, hey, liquidity providers don't run. You're going to get crap ton of money. And then you're also not having a artificially created source of demand in the form of Anchor. So that feels like an improvement to me.
Well, yeah.
But there's still the law of financial physics that someone could mint out a liability with an asset that massively depreciates in relation to that and can dump that stablecoin on Thorchain and create predictable price movements that they can profit from on a secondary market in the form of perps, puts an immense amount of strain on the system.
Okay.
That's my concern. That's my primary concern.
And that's a valid concern to have. So no matter what we're talking about here, whether it's a stablecoin, a DeFi product, whatever, nothing is 100%. And Thorchain is not an exception to this rule. right? No DeFi system, no stablecoin in the world is like 100% solid. Nothing will never happen to that thing. Nothing is. We can agree to that, right?
Yes, but certain systems that try to defy the laws of financial physics by having less
All right.
backing.
Then we just
more,
all right. Let's
more risk.
let's
The
do that
Federal
then.
Reserve.
Okay. First of all,
System is riskless. Correct. No system is riskless.
no system. My point is that no system is
The
riskless.
Federal Reserve, damn it. Come on. The best system in the world, guys.
You're
Come
talking
on,
about
stable.
you're talking about something you refer to as financial physics. That's the term you've used a couple of times.
Yes.
That is a made-up term that means nothing. It's just something that is just made up. Like there's some sort of laws. I don't know what they are. It doesn't exist in any like there are no physics in finance.
I would
It's just
fundamentally
markets.
disagree with that, but okay, that's fine.
There are no requirements in physics. I'm sorry, in finance. It's just physics have requirements, right? There are even laws like the speed of light can be actually broken, for example, right? Things can actually travel faster than the speed of light. But like physics itself has laws that cannot be broken, theoretically. Finance does not. Finance has things that it subscribes to, right? But does not have actual fucking laws that dictate it. Correct?
I
I'm
would
not
say
sure.
there's
I'm
rules
not
that have
sure.
to be followed, or else consumers will not engage.
All right, well, give you one law of finance. Go ahead.
If I pull something out with zero backing and I say it's worth $1, it is not worth $1.
It is worth it. All right, so let me explain something to you.
I agree.
What something is worth in any asset, whether we're talking about crypto, stocks, bonds, gold, whatever it doesn't matter it is. The only reason why it has any value is because of a faith system, right? The faith that this thing that I have today will be worth something tomorrow, and ideally something's worth zero. We all have faith in the US dollar.
That's not. I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree a lot with it. The value of any money in the world comes from one single thing. The value of any money in the world comes from its ability to be able to purchase or buy goods or services without a third party. That's why the US dollar has value, not because people believe in the US government, but because you can buy anywhere services or goods for the US dollars without proving that they're US dollars.
But the reason why you think that
because
requires faith that that's true.
Exactly.
It's that faith exists, guys, because the whole world, unfortunately, for me
I don't
today,
know
trades
whether or
in
not
the US dollars.
I don't know whether I can buy something with $1 tomorrow.
I can guarantee absolutely, and this was actually my next point. That this is my question since the beginning. Why on earth? And none of you, by the way, managed to answer yet. Why do we need stable coins when the reality is that so far in the history of the world, there was no such thing as a stable coin? Because if you look at the value of the dollar, $1 100 years ago is not $1 today.
That's getting pedantic over the term stable. Like nothing is actually really stable, blah, blah, which you're totally correct, right? You're totally right with that thing.
That's my question. Why do we need them then? Like if there's so much arguing
because
over what
it's
they
not
do.
something that is stable. Like when we supposed to say it's a stable coin, this means that it's relatively a stable asset. This doesn't mean that it can't go up or down in value. Like it's not a hardcore thing in that sense. Nothing can exist in a hardcore sense in that regard. Like nothing can be stable, like 100% stable that I can think of, right? It's just a question of that. What is the level of volatility of this asset, which is obviously, a spectrum of that. Some things are very volatile, some things are not very volatile. The things that are not very volatile are what we consider to be stable, even though they still have a level of volatility to them.
But I mean,
I would say that markets are.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry, go
surprised
ahead.
that you're referring to like you're not convinced by why do we need stablecoins? I mean, like if you talk about like permissionless, right? Like no intermediary. That's profound, right? Like, like it's P2P. You can transact for cross-border.
What is P2P?
Like all of those things are super important.
The problem with cross-border transactions is borders, not money. The problem with I mean, what is P2P? Some people refer to blockchain as P2P, which is bullshit because there's a blockchain in between the two people. P2P is when me and Dove, when me and Carter exchange something and there's nobody else upon us. It's when I say to Carter, I'm going to build you a house and you can fix my car. That's P2P. As long as there is a blockchain between us, that's not P2P anymore. There is a middleman called the blockchain between us. I mean, it's just a matter of how we call.
I'm not sure I
100%.
I'm not sure I 100% agree with this thing that there is a blockchain between us and.
I mean, P2P, guys. P2P means peer to peer,
right? Yeah, but it's
A
like
blockchain is not peer-to-peer technology. I'm sorry,
But are we
guys. A
arguing
blockchain.
the use case of the blockchain now? Like, I'm actually
No, no. Oh, we can. I'm wondering from all I want to say, what I want to get to down to is what well, actually, it's a good question though. But my
Yeah.
question is for the whole of this, let's say debate, right? Is to understand what is the value of anyone having a stable coin, and why will it be stable as opposed to the 5,000 years, the more than 5,000 year old history of the world has proved, and you guys are agreeing with this one by one. Chad is saying that stable is just the semantics. Dove is saying, I mean, we're not sure P2P. So why on earth do we need them if there's so much disagreement?
I'll give you one.
If they're not, why?
I want to give one example. Like credit card processor, like payment processor.
Okay.
Right? The fees right now are like in the 3%. With stablecoins, it's not like it's a few cents, right? Like its fees goes to 0. So you're removing a middleman, like a predatory middleman that is just there to as a money grab, and you're giving basically more money to the merchant. And don't you think this is an interesting use case that stablecoin brings? I mean, stablecoins, the way I see it is like it's a major driver in reducing friction in the legacy world. That's a major use case.
I mean,
Personally, I think it's sorry. And let me give Dove to speak, because Dove hasn't really made his case. But I'm just gonna answer Yusuf and then go to Dove. To answer you, Yusuf, I don't think so, because everything you said can be done with any other money. And again, there is no example in the history of the world where it worked. None, zero, absolutely zero. Not the US dollar, not the euro, not gold, not nothing did that. So this is my opinion. I'm not saying that's the correct opinion. There's just I'm answering your question.
So cross-border payments with the bank, how much time does it take? How much fees do you pay?
My answer, cross-border, the problem, to solve the problem of cross-border payments, you need to get rid of borders. That is the answer. And not the money is not the problem. As long as there's going to be a man.
Right? Yeah, but we have the
borders.
That's the problem. So what do you do?
That's the problem.
But what do you
get
do?
rid of them. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Damn it. Get rid of them. But anyways, no. Let me go to Dove, because I will answer you more. But I just want to go to Dove and let him make his case, because it's unfair, because he hasn't made his case. And
I don't need to really make a case, to be honest. I'm good.
I feel like Carter's got something to say, though. I think
Carter is definitely
he's chopping at the bit over there.
I mean, actually, I think Carter and I are on the same line, so I'm more than happy for him to take that one. I just think if we could break it down to a more simplistic term, we've gone pretty far here. We've gone to
I love it.
Blockchain is pointless and remove all borders, which is probably not a discussion that the six of us here could do in an hour or so. That's some intense stuff.
I love it.
But yeah, it's good. But I think if you asked why a stable, so I can't speak for everyone else's blockchain. So let's just maybe dial it back from change world order to why is it maybe practical in our scenario. In terms of our blockchain, it makes a lot of sense. I think I said this before. It makes a lot of sense. I know Chad disagrees about the capital efficiency. We've had a different experience. We've been able to grow our treasury and do all sorts of stuff by leveraging Atom that we held, and we've used that to our advantage, and it's been really, really good. And we've seen that if you can take a stale asset, Sid mentioned staked assets. It's awesome that you guys are doing that. That's great. We haven't got to that point yet. That's awesome. And I wish you guys well in that, because it's a tricky business. But you guys are doing super well, and it's been great to see the growth. Just by the ways there. But if you talk about why do we need them? Why do we need them in terms of the Kujira ecosystem versus the end goal, the entire world? Yes, I agree with Yusuf. We're also looking, not just looking. We've had local money, for example, launch on our platform, and they are a peer-to-peer network. Again, don't shoot me. I know there's a blockchain in the middle, but this is an extremely important point of view, and I totally agree with Yusuf in what he said. Those guys they live in South America. There's basically there's really very limited options. Of course, yeah, you're getting 10% fees and all the rest of it, but you're also getting like an inflationary runaway and all that stuff we know about. So these solutions exist to be iterated upon, but to help, I would like to think, people at the end of the day, right? So these are better systems than the ones that exist now. Largely for, when you're sitting in the States or England or wherever, any like, you're kind of less worried, although now that is changing. But in terms of the Kujira ecosystem itself, if you just look at that, there's a complete sort of financial ecosystem that you can interact with. And you're not going to do that with actual dollars. You can't fucking send someone, you can't use a credit card and pay someone and then into the system. And, it's an important medium of exchange, very, very important, because if we all believe in the blockchain, which it sounds like we hopefully do, then this is a very, very important step. And it's basically crucial. You can, of course, have a system that, denominates against some other kind of currency, but it's very, very important for regular people. So as I say, even in the Kujira ecosystem, it's quite a simple thing. Why do we need a stablecoin? Well, we believe it's a more capital efficient way of using our money, but more importantly, B, it allows people to actually transact with something that they are familiar with and then move through an ecosystem like Kujira or, like Shade, like Comdex, like Thorchain, and to be able to effectively use their money, even though it's denominated or it's pegged against the dollar. It's very important for people to have something that they can go, okay, here's my paycheck, it's worth X. Now I can move that into a system that is decentralized. Even if parts of the protocol design or the stablecoin design might not be perfect, it's definitely a massive, massive step forward for people to be able to basically take dollars at one point, move them into some kind of stable, and then from that point onwards, basically, they are in an environment that they can then, whether it's be trading or peer-to-peer, like you said, Yusuf, whether it's be cross-border payments, protocols will spin up. I think these things we don't have to, I don't know. As I said, I think we went pretty far there, like in the theoretical, like what might happen in 10 years and no borders and things like that. But I think for now, you have to basically give people the tools that they need to be able to get ahead financially and not be super stung with all sorts of various things that happen in the world. So yeah, I mean, just from a simplistic point of view, just having a stable coin in an ecosystem that is stable, that works, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And like we've all said, there's going to be many iterations on all of our stable coins. I think the other interesting thing is that we all have stable coins and we can all then look at various pools and stuff, which is exciting now, because if you look at Cosmos, right, there's a lot more stables. So we can now have pools between our stables, and arbitrage becomes easier. Things like that become a little bit more secure as time goes on. UST kind of burst out the gates. Don't think there was anything really happening in Cosmos. And if you think about this growth and expansion of stablecoins, it's a good thing, because we can now actually back each other to a certain point by having pools between each other, helping to arbitrage, and those things are good. So even I think from a kind of simplistic, just like ecosystem point of view, it's a good thing. And then of course you get things like cross-border payments and stuff that pop out of it, which we are already seeing. So
I would love to add something on your points, Dov. Is this theory that was written or like expressed by Ethan Buckman, so co-founder of Cosmos, which is monetary localism. So if we believe, I'm not saying I believe in this or it's gonna happen, but it has some merit. And if you look at the network state theory, right? Again, there are some pros, there are some cons, some people are against. But if you believe that is something that we want to happen, so you have a community gathered around the token, but if you can also on top of that token have a secondary token that is a stable currency, then you're able to close the loop. So you will have the culture of the community, you'll have the token itself, where you can make money with that token because you believe in the community and you believe in the project and the vocation, and you also have like a stable currency to transact between that. And on top of that, you can have so that would be done at the local level. So we could very envision a world where you would have like dozens of thousands of stable coins that each serve a specific need within that local community of, let's say, 10,000, 100,000 people. And then you can bridge that to like a more like global stable coins. And all of those like stable coins like coexist peacefully and are like an anchor point for the community. So even in that regard, I think stable coins could have an interesting purpose.
And on that note, because I know two of you have already said you have to jump, actually three. So
Me
on
too.
that note, so four, and that leaves everybody. That leaves everybody. So on that note, quickly, while we have like the 3 last minutes or whatever, could any of you or all of you, if you have the time, I know we disagree on a lot of things here, but just like a small summary, which in the shape of an advice for like Dove used the expression regular people. I'm going to quote you on that. So a bit of advice for regular people like myself here, what to avoid, like as fire, right? Like just 2 words, like to say, hey, look for this, don't do this in terms of stable coins, like out there for all of the users. Like Dove, start with you and quickly with everybody, like just like resume if you can, guys,
By the
please.
way, sorry, I didn't. I'm thinking in a specific kind of brain. I don't mean like anyone that doesn't.
It was a joke.
It
was a joke.
Isn't regular.
I was joking, though. It's okay. We're all joking here. It's all good, though.
Yeah.
Go on. While we have still 2 minutes, go on.
Yeah. So sorry. Repeat the question again because I got carried away.
So just for everybody, because we all have to jump off. Just in a shape of advice for a normal user, for everyday user, what to avoid or not to avoid in terms of stable coins. So what to look for, like anything you want to say, like look for that or don't do that or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it from a user's perspective, it's interesting, right? Because we're all talking now about design and things like that. But I think I tend to agree with a few of the others on the panel. Obviously, Chad, we haven't seen yours yet, so I don't want to comment on it. I'm sure it's going to do well and stuff like that. So excuse me if I don't mention that, only because I'm super keen to see and all the rest of it. But I do think most of the rest of us that have a similar stablecoin design have agreed. Having sensible min caps and making sure that you are using assets that are highly liquid. I know that oracles often, well, they require that. So you need at least these are like little things that you could ask the project, right? Like, how does your oracle work? Does it make sure that there's enough liquidity? Does it look for a minimum of 3 highly liquid price points? These are things I think that are decent questions to ask. Just again, pretty simple, but yeah, just make sure that they are not just using any old assets to mint the stable coin. That's probably one piece of advice. So from me, I think that's it. Just double check how the oracles are implemented. You don't need to understand the tech. Just say like, hey, are you sure that these sources have highly liquid price points for you to index? So yeah, that's one for me.
Thanks, Dov. Thank you. Chad, Carter, Sid, Yusuf.
So the thing I would say to people is that I would not put much money into any new stable coins. I don't care what the design is. I don't care if it's algo or one of the guys you guys have created, the one that I'm creating. Oh, that doesn't matter. Like, I would just hold off on putting, you can put small amounts, so, whatever, that's fine. But I wouldn't worry about putting in, large quantities into any stable coin design. And so for me, my trust in a stable coin design increases with time. Doesn't mean that USDT being the oldest one is perfectly fine and that's never going to collapse. Like, that could totally happen tomorrow. I don't think any of us would be particularly surprised if it did. But generally speaking, the older the stable coin is, probably the more trust you should have in it at a high level. That's probably true. And so I would say don't get too involved with any of these stable coins, including my own, too early on.
Carter, your piece of advice?
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice that Chad gave. Can totally agree on that. It's it's such a young industry, and we're all very locally time biased, right? So like 50 years are going to go by, I'm going to have gray hairs, and there'll be systems that will have been around for 30 years, and at that point, like, models are models, and they're always capable of breaking. And as time goes on, the assumptions become more solid that the assumptions are true. So yeah, don't put your life savings into any stable coin probably anytime soon. Probably until 50, 60 years from now. We got a long ways to go. But that being said, like, ask questions about mechanics, understand it the best you can, and understand that you're still an early innovator, right? And enjoy this time in history. It's a fun
Enjoy the ride. Sid, thanks Carter. Sid?
I think very strongly agree with what Dov said earlier on. Ask the relevant questions, dig deeper. If things don't make sense to you, they probably don't make sense. And if someone's not able to explain to you, then it definitely does not make sense. If you're not able to find the answers for what you're looking for, then that's probably also by design. So just be wary of those things. It's like it's all about being able to find out what's in place and why it's in place and what it's doing to protect you. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Sid. Yusuf, final word?
Yeah, no final word, honestly. Like, I think everything was pretty well said by the people here. Yeah, like, just be careful. Make sure that there are, I think, minting limits, like caps. Sorry, like that you have caps. I think is very important. The type of collateral that is backing also the stable coin. I think it gives you a good idea. And the rest was said by the team here.
Guys, thank you, Yusuf, by the way, for the final word and advice. Guys, thank you very much. Please don't jump off. There's 30 seconds of your time after I say bye. I'm going to stop it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Sorry this didn't happen live again. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please take the advice of all the speakers and see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Ciao.